Thanks, Gina. Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Project Outcome Updates from Public and Academic Libraries. Great to see you. We've got lots of representation from different types of libraries all over the country here with us today. My name is Sarah Girk. I'm Program Manager at ACRL and joined by a few of my colleagues here. You heard Gina Parsons-Diamond, Program Coordinator at ACRL, doing the sound checks at the beginning. Emily Plowman is Manager for Impact and Advocacy at the Public Library Association, and Nellie Barrett, Program Officer also at PLA. We have with us today two presenters who represent our different committees that help oversee and improve project outcome. Linda Hofschaar is Chair of PLA's Measurement, Evaluation, and Assessment Committee and the Director of the Library Research Service at Colorado State Library. Tiffany Garrett is Chair of ACRL's Project Outcome for Academic Libraries Editorial Board and Assistant Director of Library Services at Nevada State College, and you'll be hearing from both of them during today's session. So our agenda today is pretty straightforward. I'll give you a brief introduction. Tiffany and Linda, respectively, will be sharing some of the work that we've done with academic libraries and public libraries over the past year. And then Emily at the end will share some of the recent and also new upcoming developments from the Project Outcome Toolkit, and we'll be sure to reserve plenty of time for questions at the end. So please do share questions in the chat box as we go along, and we'll be sure to get to those before the end of today's session. So quick poll before we get started. If you would please click on your raise hand button. It's usually at the bottom of the participants window. We'd love to hear from you. Is your library already using Project Outcomes? Just give us a sense of how many of you are already engaged and using the toolkit. Okay, seeing those numbers climb. In the 40s, 45 people maybe out of about 155. It's pretty good number. So hopefully if you aren't already using Project Outcome in the session today, you'll hear something that will help you get excited about getting started, about what you can do with the toolkit. And if you're already using it, then hopefully you'll get some new ideas that can help you engage further based on what other libraries are doing. And my slide is not loading. That's always helpful. Okay, just go back for a moment there. Project Outcome, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, it does come in two varieties. For public libraries, projectoutcome.org, and academic libraries at acrl.projectoutcome.org. It's free for both, so whichever type of library you are at, you will be able to log in and access the toolkit that way. Project Outcome helps you measure the impact of your libraries, and this is only one way of measuring impact. It's only one piece of the puzzle. We happen to think it's an important piece of the puzzle, but different types of impact measurement can help you understand different questions you might be seeking to answer. So this is, again, this is one piece. You might also be doing satisfaction surveys or needs assessments, measuring outputs, but we happen to think outcomes are important, and that adding outcome data to your impact story can help drive decision making and strategic planning. So it's an important piece to include here. In the toolkit, if you haven't looked in a while or haven't had a chance to sign up yet, it is based around a set of quick and simple surveys. There's a survey management portal where you can set those up and administer them. Once you have data in the system, you get ready-made and customizable data reports. We offer a set of interactive data dashboards, benchmarking against peer libraries, resources and training materials, and also a peer discussion board where you can ask questions about what others are doing. So all of these tools are available to both public and academic libraries. For public libraries, there are now 8 survey topics. One of these, the health survey, is new this year, and Linda will be talking about that development. For academic libraries, we only launched our toolkit about a year ago, so we have our 7 new survey topics and a first year of activity within the toolkit to report on and share with you today. All of those surveys measure 4 key learning outcomes: knowledge, confidence, application or behavior change, and awareness. And all of them include qualitative questions as well, asking what patrons like the most and what the library can do to improve. And of course, with each of the surveys, you have the opportunity to add up to 3 custom questions of your own. And you're also setting the context in terms of how you administer the survey and how you're using it to get the evidence that your library needs. So our basic survey tools, we have immediate surveys, which are designed to be used upon completion of a program or service that can be really useful for informing changes and getting a snapshot that can help you with reporting and advocacy. The follow-up surveys are a slightly different format. They're looking at adoption after some time has passed. So looking at how patrons have used the skills that they learned from library programming. And they can be useful in terms of informing internal planning and measuring progress towards your goals. We also provide in the resources, resources that can help you in every step of the outcome measurement process, and also a set of outcome measurement guidelines that can help you expand beyond project outcome to look at designing your own surveys, other data collection methods, and ways of capturing long-term impact. So you'll hear from Tiffany and Linda about how academic and public libraries have put these tools to work to make improvements and to better serve library patrons. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Tiffany to get us started.
All right, thanks so much, Sarah. I'm just going to go ahead and switch over to my screen. I think I should have sent a request to you, it looks like.
Yep.
Oh. Sorry. All right, can y'all see that now?
Yes.
Great. So I wanted to just talk about the project outcome for academic libraries. As Sarah mentioned, it has been out for about a year, and we've been working on it for a couple of years about that. Before that, it's based off of the work of the Public Library Association on the Public Libraries Toolkit. And even though it's fairly new, it's already been helping a lot of academic libraries easily demonstrate their impact. Our first annual report is intended to help libraries understand engagement with project outcome on a national scale and provide a record of ACRL's work, not only in the first year since project outcome launched, but also the previous 2 years where we developed the toolkit to reach this point. Libraries use project outcome to learn what their users are learning and to gather evidence that can help them understand and articulate the value of the library. The annual report takes a big picture view, summarizing how academic libraries are using each of the surveys, which I'll talk about a lot today, and also the types of programs they are assessing and what they're learning as a result. One of the things covered in the annual report is this timeline for how the toolkit was developed. In November 2017, the ACRL Board of Directors established the Project Outcome for Academic Libraries Task Force, which I was a member of, to adapt the project outcome measures developed by the Public Library Association to an academic library context. Collecting consistent outcomes data that would allow academic libraries to benchmark at the national and state level and help ACRL better support its members and mission. The task force met in March 2018, where we selected survey topics and talked about how to structure our work over the next year. And then we worked remotely to create the surveys that were field tested in the second half of 2018. In the spring of 2019, the toolkit was launched, and that June, the task force ended their work and the ACRL board approved the new Project Outcome Editorial Board to oversee Project Outcome for academic libraries going forward. Both the task force and the editorial board have been comprised of members from a range of institution types to better ensure the toolkit broadly serves the needs of the field. Members of these groups also represent other key ACRL committees to help coordinate work across the association. The annual report covers data from the first year, so through April 20th, 2020, but these are some updated numbers on user engagement with the Project Outcome for Academic Libraries Toolkit currently. We have over 3,000 registered users from over 1,000 institutions in 42 countries. About half of those institutions have created surveys, and together they've collected over 40,000 responses. You can see from the graph that these responses come from a variety of institution types based on Carnegie class. We have seen a drop-off in engagement due to the impact of COVID-19, and the nature of that engagement has shifted somewhat as libraries shift to online programs and services. However, use of the toolkit continues to grow. While we do have registered users from many countries, the majority of survey activity comes from academic libraries in the United States, as you can see in this visualization from the annual report, which represents use of the immediate surveys, which are the most popular. And we also wanted to share this high-level overview of survey responses. This was updated recently and represents more data than is available in the annual report. Here you can see the average rating that users have given to libraries on a 5-point Likert scale by topic area and outcome type. It shows that overall, users tend to agree or strongly agree that the library is helping them meet outcomes related to knowledge, confidence, application, and awareness across all survey types. While overall the results are positive, people just generally love libraries, they do definitely suggest some areas for improvement. So users are consistently asking for more help, more resources, and more information. In addition to exploring the quantitative results like these pictured here, libraries should take some time to read through those open-ended responses and look for specific actionable feedback from those. The annual report also goes over how libraries are currently using Project Outcome. For those of you who may not yet have started using Project Outcome or are using the toolkit in only 1 or 2 areas, this section might give you some ideas on what else you could be doing with it. So instruction is by far the most heavily used survey topic, with over 1,700 surveys created when the annual report was published in April. And it's being used for a variety of different types of instruction, as you can see here: discipline-specific instruction, first-year experience, information literacy instruction, and a variety of other workshops. The feedback is largely positive across all institutions. 93% of respondents across all of the follow-up surveys reported that they used what they learned to do better in their classes. We recently released a case study by Scott Lanning from Southern Utah University that goes in depth with how their library has used this survey to assess and improve library instruction sessions. He talks about how they found the percentages that appear in the reports. For example, 75% of students learned something new that was helpful. And they use those to get an overview of the session and determine if their examples are resonating with student groups they present to. And he also discusses the helpfulness of the comments in making specific changes, such as a student who still didn't understand how to use databases other than EBSCO, and how they added some information about identifying and selecting databases as part of the sessions going forward. Space is also a popular survey topic, with almost 80 surveys in April. Libraries have used space to assess study rooms, conference rooms, common spaces, and even some space-related services like after-hours access. Across all of the follow-up surveys, 94% of respondents report that they return to use the space again. We have a few case studies that address use of the space survey. You can access these case studies in the Project Outcome Toolkit under Resources. One of them is this one that I wrote about how we use the space survey at Nevada State College to assess our study rooms. And we had overall positive results, but we did have a low score on the outcome related to awareness. And as a result, we made a bunch of changes to library signage throughout the building. And a later space survey that assessed a different area of the library found a higher score on awareness. So we do feel like that made a difference. And we also used the comments, which indicated that a lot of people were using these group study rooms for quiet study, to make some changes like adding sound panels, changing our policy so that one student could reserve a room on their own, and then also advocating to campus administration, asking them to create a walled off entryway into the library to reduce noise from the student dining hall downstairs. The Library Technology Survey has been used about 40 times in April. Across all the institutions, the qualitative comments on these surveys largely show appreciation for the access to and availability of the technology, as well as requests for more of it. Case studies from Iowa State University and Central Piedmont Community College both discuss use of the technology survey. In particular, I want to just talk about the case study from Iowa State. Greg Davis writes about how they used the survey during field testing to assess the equipment checkout process. And they were able to successfully leverage the results of that survey to request more resources and add to the equipment available for students to check out. Oftentimes, simple use numbers aren't as compelling when you're trying to advocate to grow a service as this outcomes-based data can be. The digital and special collections topic area had about 40 surveys in April. We do not currently have any case studies that detail the use of this survey, but in the toolkit, we have seen libraries use it to assess archives instruction, digital literacy programs, and also film, photography, and television related classes. Research is the second most popular survey topic, with 150 surveys as of April. Most respondents seem to use the survey for student consultations and appointments or impromptu reference services at a reference desk. In some cases, data management assistance or help with sources and citation are specified in the survey. I know at my library, we include the link in follow-up emails that are automatically sent to students after they come for a meet with a librarian appointment. In the past, we only assessed the output of reference appointments, but now we're able to provide information about the impact on students. Across all of the immediate surveys issued for this topic at any institution, 90% of respondents reported learning something new that helped with their research. And in the follow-up surveys, 97% say they actually used what they learned to complete a research task or goal. The events and programs survey is also pretty popular. It had about 100 surveys in April. Some were for research and citation workshops, exhibit openings, or lunch and learn sessions. In my library, we used it to assess an educational film screening. In a case study on the project outcomes site, Jennifer Arnold from Central Piedmont Community College discusses how they use this survey to assess a workshop on recognizing disinformation and fake news that was actually part of a collaboration with Student Life on a larger campus event for Constitution Day. And they found the survey results really helpful for improving the program, and also were able to share some of the feedback that was more geared towards the event as a whole with their partners in Student Life. Finally, we have the teaching support survey, which had 42 surveys in April. Libraries have used it to assess online instruction support. It's sometimes used for faculty perceptions of library instruction sessions that were delivered to students, and for workshops that are specifically geared towards faculty on a variety of topics, such as open educational resources. At Nevada State, our OER workshops with faculty have saved students over $500,000, and that works well as an assessment measure to advocate for the continuation of the program with campus administrators, but it doesn't really help us improve the quality of the program for participating faculty. That's where Project Outcome steps in for us. We use the teaching support survey to refine our programming and outreach to participating faculty members so that we're constantly improving. Across all academic libraries with surveys in this topic area, faculty are overwhelmingly positive about the library. They talk in the comments often about how departmental liaisons keep them updated and informed. And these surveys are being used in a variety of ways with overwhelmingly positive feedback. So I also wanted to take some time to talk about ways that you can use these surveys to take action. To use them for advocacy for just the value of the library. Campus administrators often want to see outcomes-based data, but it can be very difficult to get in other ways. You know, I know a lot of libraries have invested in correlational studies, mine is one of them, but this takes an enormous amount of time and resources. And even when you get the data, there are a lot of confounding variables and considerations to take into account. And so this sort of like self-reported outcomes data from students can be much easier to collect and much sort of simpler to analyze. And so it can be a great way to get that outcome related stuff in front of your campus administrators. You can also use it when you're advertising to the users of the service. For instance, advertising for a workshop that 98% of previous attendees learned something new that was helpful. In terms of assessment, Project Outcome can be really helpful, particularly because of that peer benchmarking piece, which can be so compelling often in accreditation-related assessment efforts. It can be great for partnerships, just like the example given from Jennifer Arnold at Central Piedmont. if you're working with other departments on campus, being able to share these very helpful, very insightful reports that are sort of easy to export from Project Outcome can be great. In terms of program improvements, I found a lot of people talk about the value of Project Outcome when it comes to that. It's really focused on, especially the open-ended questions, providing a wealth of information that can help you improve teaching strategies, make changes to the program, really identify what you could be doing to make things better. And then you can also use them to advocate for more specific resources, sort of going beyond advocacy of just the value of the library in general, sometimes making a specific request, like an actual ask for additional funding to add study rooms, increase your equipment checkout process, something specific that students are asking for, can be a great way to handle those advocacy efforts as well. So to help libraries learn to engage with the new Project Outcome for Academic Libraries Toolkit, over the last year, ACRL sponsored a series of workshops and presentations at conferences across the US. And we are committed to continuing to offer new learning opportunities. We'll continue to offer free webinars like this one on a range of topics every few months. If you didn't have a chance to participate in any of the sponsored workshops over the past year, ACRL is offering an online version at the beginning of August. There is a registration fee for participating in that 2-hour workshop. And then once regular travel and gatherings can resume, we're happy to take bookings for new half-day license workshops. These will be facilitated by members of the Project Outcome Editorial Board. If your library or organization is interested in learning more about how to get started using Project Outcome, we offer an introductory webinar to help library workers start to engage with the toolkit and ask questions. Now I'm going to turn it over to Linda to talk about Project Outcome for public libraries.
Thank you so much, Tiffany, and it is exciting to see just all of the activity on the academic side of Project Outcome over the past year. I am just pulling up my slides. Let's see. All right, and so hopefully everybody is seeing Project Outcome for public libraries now. And I want to just start this section by mentioning that Project Outcome started with public libraries, so it has been in the field with public libraries for about 5 years, whereas in comparison with academic libraries, it is newer. And we, over the past year have seen that activity has been pretty similar in terms of usage of the surveys as compared with previous years. And so if you are interested in learning more about kind of to what extent the surveys are being used and how they are being used, there are annual reports from previous years and other resources on the Project Outcome website that share that information. But today, during this Public Libraries update, I want to focus on a few other things. And so the first thing that I'm interested in sharing is, as I think Sarah mentioned at the beginning, that for the first time there is a new survey topic. When Project Outcome launched for public libraries, there were 7 survey topics, and those have remained the same until about mid-2019. And at that point, PLA partnered with NNLM, the network of the National Library of Medicine, to create a new health survey. So that was an exciting development. And you can see the items from the health topic survey on the right side of your screen. And so about 200 or a little more than 200 surveys have been completed for the health topic since the launch. And examples of some of the types of programs that public libraries have used this survey for include exercise classes, programs about nutrition, or healthy lifestyle instruction. And so with developing this new survey topic, that was also exciting, in addition to just adding a new topic, but to think about what the model might look like for continuing to expand the topics that are available for public libraries. And, you know, we really recognized the benefits of adding this topic in terms of being able to more specifically measure this new area. It was also an opportunity to be responsive to an activity area that is getting more and more popular in libraries. And also it gave PLA an opportunity in terms of some of the grants that it provides to libraries to provide an outcome-based measurement option for health specifically. And so the committee that oversees Project Outcome for Public Libraries, we are tasked with considering new topics for inclusion. And so we are always considering kind of both what is up and coming, newly emerging that we might want to respond to. And then there are some perennial requests that we've seen pretty consistently over time. And so examples of some of those perennial requests include STEM. We know that there's a strong interest in the field for a survey specifically on STEM related programming, and also fun. So really just kind of getting at more of the leisure aspects of public libraries. In terms of newly emerging topics, something that we've really seen in light of the pandemic is the topic of community connection. So how can communities remain connected, or how can we facilitate connections amongst communities while we are physically distanced from each other? And we've seen libraries step up to play a major role in this. So I share all of this just to say that as a committee, we are considering what topics may be good options to add. And as we do that, it's important to us that they are topics that would be broadly applicable across the field. You know, this tool is available for public libraries across the US and Canada. And so we want, you know, we want to choose topics that would be relevant to many public libraries in North America. And then we want that also because one of the points of Project Outcome was to be able to aggregate data across public libraries so that PLA can really tell the story of what is happening in libraries at the national level. So those criteria in terms of being broadly applicable to public libraries and then giving us the ability to tell those national level stories are really critical to us as we take into consideration what new topics might be added. I did see a few comments in chat about potential topics that public library staff are interested in, and we will certainly add those to the list of what we are already considering. Another update that I wanted to share about Project Outcome on the public library side is that PLA as a whole has really shifted their work so that it is focused on outcomes and really emphasizes using data to make decisions. And so in terms of PLA's grants to libraries, they have put an emphasis on those grants that they should include outcome-based reporting. And also where possible, libraries that receive those grants are encouraged to use the Project Outcome Toolkit. So Project Outcome really has kind of been embedded kind of throughout PLA efforts. Some of you may have attended an in-person training if you're in a public library on Project Outcome. For the past several years, PLA has offered the opportunity for these one-day regional trainings that libraries or library support organizations could run. Where a Project Outcome trainer would come and do an in-person workshop on using Project Outcome. So that curriculum is currently being revamped and being made virtual, especially important during these times. And some of the other updates to that curriculum include that more has been built into the curriculum in terms of really giving participants the opportunity to develop specific outcomes for their library over the course of the training. There are also more interactive components that are being added to this new training curriculum, as well as more of a focus on interpreting the data. So once you have your project outcome survey results, what do you do with them? And then I had referenced the committee that oversees project outcome. It's the Measurement, Evaluation, and Assessment Committee, or MEAC. And a couple of activities that we are working on right now related to project outcome include developing some new case studies. And so if you have not seen the existing case studies that are part of the project outcome toolkit, I definitely recommend that you check those out. They are stories of how individual public libraries have used project outcome both to improve programs, for advocacy purposes. So those really provide great examples of the benefits of using project outcome. Another task that we're working on in the committee is really kind of over the next year, thinking about now that project outcome has been in the field for public libraries for 5 years, so really we're at kind of an advanced stage of the model. What's next? What needs to be done to really remain relevant to the field and to take this to the next level? So those are some of our current and upcoming activities. I would add that if you have an interest in public library data and evaluation, I encourage you to consider volunteering to be a committee member. The applications are closed now, but they will be open kind of in the coming year to be considered for an appointment starting in summer of 21. We, in addition to working on project outcome, work on all of PLA's data related efforts. So it's a really fascinating committee to be involved with. Okay. So project outcome has offered a number of webinars over the year to provide training about how to use the toolkit. And I wanted to highlight a couple of recent offerings that are particularly relevant in light of our current situation, in light of the pandemic. And so one webinar that was offered earlier this spring, Evaluating Online Library Learning. And this actually was intended for both academic and public library staff. And so it covers virtual learning activities and how to use the project outcome toolkit in the virtual learning environment to measure impact. So that is one training opportunity. And then another webinar that just happened in the past month, and this was for public libraries specifically, was looking at virtual programs, how to develop specific outcomes if your library is offering virtual programs right now, and then really making the project outcome platform work for you in the virtual environment. That webinar also touches on some other COVID-19 resources for libraries. So that's another recent offering that I encourage you to check out. All right. And with that, I am going to stop and turn things over to Emily.
Thank you, Linda. And we've had some good questions in the chat. Definitely continue to offer those up. As we're just wrapping up today's session, we should have plenty of time to get to them. As I'm flipping over to the slides, I just want to share just a little bit of a higher level reflection. I was hired to work on the Project Outcome Toolkit just over 5 years ago, and we've seen so much progress since we started working on trying to get the field first in the public side of things and then into the academic side of things, just in terms of libraries being more interested, more confident, more capable in measuring, shifting their thinking towards more outcome-based focused measurement. And that's just been so exciting to see. And when I think about looking at, when I think about looking at how we continue to advance the field in terms of their capacity to measure outcomes and their interest in how they're able to use data, outcome-based data for decision making, I consider there to be really two major streams of activity going on. One is around improving the toolkit, and one is around thinking about what the next step would be for libraries that have spent a lot of time getting themselves familiar with what outcomes are and are ready to take the next step into writing their own outcomes in their own survey format. So what I'm going to focus on in the next couple of slides is really based on the toolkit and based on what we've heard in the toolkit and how libraries want to see the toolkit advanced. And then I'll also reflect a little bit at the end about what we think the future of outcome measurement, beyond what we have in the current toolkit could look like. So the toolkit itself, again, we set it up to be really low barrier, easy to access, easy for libraries to pick up and run with in a very short order when we first launched it. And we've been able to take the concept and move it forward over the years. We've made improvements to the toolkit design, we've made improvements to the interface, all of which has been reflected from what users are telling us they want to see happen in the toolkit to make it better for them. We have always assumed that there would be a standardized set of surveys in the toolkit, and that's kind of the baseline, the foundation of what Project Outcome is supposed to be. It's supposed to be something that will facilitate people's shifted mindset towards outcome-based decision making, and the surveys as a standard set of topics and a standard set of questions remove the barrier of libraries needing to worry about writing their own survey questions and doing that correctly. So that was the original intent of the task force. And because of that, it allows us to really focus on enhancing the features of the toolkit itself. So what we've done in the past year, we did actually make, with part of the launch of the ACRL toolkit, they decided that they wanted to make Project Outcome available internationally from the get-go. So because we were able to have the investment on the academic side of things, PLA was able to make changes to our toolkit as well to allow for better international usage. That is a feature that's accessible in both tools right now. The public library side is making some improvements within the public library space that are coming. But part of that improvement that I think benefits everybody is that we've improved Google Translate, which was facilitated because of this transition towards a more international framework, but also definitely helps with other languages spoken here in the United States. And we are working to continue to improve that as well. We know that the primary users of the toolkit right now, either the librarians or the people responding to the surveys, are English speakers, but that doesn't really reach the full breadth of what a diverse population looks like. So we're working towards making it more accessible across all language types. We've also improved the mobile friendliness of the surveys. It wasn't really a big priority for public libraries when we first launched the toolkit to have them available online. We saw that occurring to some extent with summer reading a fair amount, maybe with some of the digital learning related activities, but academics definitely use the mobile side of the survey toolkit a lot more frequently than publics. And with publics doing a lot more virtual programming, that demand has definitely increased. Oh, interesting. Okay, so I see that there's a comment, the slides are not moving, only the new development is displaying. Is that correct for everyone else?
Yeah,
And
we haven't
okay.
seen you advance the slides.
All right, I did in a different view, so I'll go ahead and fix the share. Or Sarah, if you could just pull up that slide on your computer, would you mind helping to advance that? So I'll continue talking as we work to pull up the slides. We've improved the mobile friendliness of the survey. So they're a lot easier to run online. They look a lot better than they did online. And the ability to actually schedule and post them online is a much easier process as well. We are finding ways to make data more accessible to librarians as well. So we do have these data dashboards that are set up that are really intended to help with a really quick view of what your impact looks like. But as library staff become more familiar with the data and they become more confident using the results, we also saw this demand for wanting to actually pull the surveys out of the system in a raw data format so people could be using Excel or other types of data analysis tools for their own more advanced analysis purposes. So we made some improvements to the toolkit that make accessing raw data a lot more easy. As we already talked about, there's been new case studies and resources that have been put up online. And then we're improving that online ability to embed surveys in other web pages. We heard this come from the academic side, and you know, it was something that we had evidence around needing to improve. And what has been really nice about working together as a partnership in this is that we can bring improvements to both sites at the same time. So when an academic improvement happens, the public side gets it, and vice versa. So while we may not have a huge use case on the public side right now for embedded surveys and other web pages, we might see that feature come to be used more frequently on the public side just because it's available. So that's been a really exciting benefit of working in partnership with ACRL. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what the future looks like. So we are continuing again to invest in the toolkit itself. One of the big changes that happened when the public library side concluded its grant funding from the Gates Foundation is that we switched from a new build concept. We're just trying to get everything out in the field and get this, you know, exposed to as many libraries possible, to this more strategic focus on targeted improvements that are really based on what we hear from field requests. So everything that we have moving forward is really done based on what we think is the most important to the field, and also what we have the capacity to spend money on. So the qualitative dashboards are going to be built in 2020, early 2021, where we're providing more context around the results that we get from those open-ended comments. So the open-ended comments that ask what the library did well and what could be improved have always just been something that library staff look at within their libraries. They read through those, they can do coding of the comments if they want, but we haven't really been able to incorporate them into those interactive dashboards the same way we have with those Likert scale responses. So by improving, we're adding an improvement where this dashboard now takes on some of those open-ended comments, and you can start doing some analysis, high-level analysis of what you're seeing in those comments. So we're really excited to be bringing that on board. We're also improving the survey management tool interface. Having gone through 2 different survey management tools now, with the project outcome tool, we know that the way that people use the survey tool now looks different than what we originally built it for. And some of that has to just do with libraries becoming more advanced and having more surveys in the survey toolkit. And some of it just has to do with general design improvements, period. So we're going to be making the survey management tool itself a lot more streamlined. It's going to be a lot easier for libraries to find surveys and a lot easier for them to organize them within the tool. And this is actually a really big improvement on the state and group side of activities as well, just because there's a lot more surveys that groups and states look at. We're improving the database and performance of the data itself. So we have always kind of struggled to find a way how to move data very quickly between the survey management tool and the dashboards so that we can get analysis happening immediately, but there have been delays in how that analysis is processed. So we've been continuing to improve that so that those reporting times become shorter and shorter. You're not having to run a report and wait 10 minutes to get it. It's that time frame is becoming down to 10, 15, 30 seconds. So that's been some great improvements that we're going to keep bringing on board throughout the next year. And then lastly, again, these case studies and resources. Where we see project outcome being the most impactful for libraries learning about it the first time and thinking about what they can do with outcome data, it's in the ability of libraries to look at case studies and see what their peers are doing and understanding what the possibilities are. You might come into the project outcome toolkit knowing you just want to measure summer reading or you just want to measure a space within your library, but looking at the case studies really helps you understand what other opportunities there might be so you can really fully use the toolkit to the best of its abilities. And I think within the resources too, we're going to really start seeing more information about how to do more advanced outcome measurement. So with that, I'll wrap up with another kind of high-level assessment about the future of project outcome, and then I'll address some of the questions we see in Q&A. We know that there are varying levels of skill sets out there in terms of what libraries are able to do for measurement and evaluation period, as well as how advanced libraries want to go to measure their own outcomes. And as we think about the future and talk about the future of outcomes, this idea of how libraries can be measuring very targeted outcomes themselves is something that we definitely plan to address on the PLA committee side of work, and is something that the academics are grappling with as well. And there's definitely a boundary within the toolkit where using the standardized surveys allows you to get aggregated information. It allows you to see how you're doing with your library peers or your state peers, and it provides a simple approach to doing outcome measurement. And that's always what the toolkit is really, the online survey management tool and data dashboards are going to do and are intended to do. It's for aggregating data and consistent data collection across library types. But once outcome measurement continues to advance, and we see this in the virtual programming happening post-COVID-19, not post-COVID-19, in response to COVID-19, we see that libraries are using different online platforms to be doing online engagement. That online engagement might not have the same kind of structured learning that we might typically see happen in a pre-COVID environment. And we see there being a need to provide support for libraries that might want to do really granular level measurement or really targeted measurement. So those questions we don't have answers to right now, but we know that there are things that we want to address for the field, we want to provide support for the field for, and we'll continue to have discussions about over the next year in particular. So I can't say anything right now, but I think just as a teaser, continue to stay engaged because we're always aware of that. And I think now is the time where we're really going to be able to start doing a little bit more. So with that, I'm going to turn it to questions, and I took a couple of questions down already, and I see that some have come in while I'm talking. Just as a quick kickoff for both Tiffany and Linda, I just wrapped up talking about the future, thinking about what the future of project outcome could look like. What for you, about 5 years from now, where would you like to see either your library or the field as a whole have gone around outcome measurement? What might be something that would be a dream concept for you to see libraries using outcome data for action, or that you as your library would like to do? And Tiffany, I'll start with you and then turn it over to Linda.
Sure, I'll start. Thinking about, the dream is kind of intimidating. But I would say, like, one of my initial thoughts when you were asking the question is that, at least in the next year, I think what would be great is if we could just get more engagement with this toolkit, because I think that one of the really valuable things that it offers is this peer benchmarking, which is only as valuable as the participants, you know? So I think that the more people who are creating surveys, who are using this toolkit, the more valuable that piece is. And that's not really easily available from any other source. So I think that that's the main thing that the academic libraries editorial board has focused on this year, and will probably continue focusing on next year. But I think that, you know, I'm really looking forward also to seeing the qualitative data dashboard. I think that we get constant feedback about the value of those open-ended questions. And so having a way within the toolkit to analyze that stuff could be really great. Yeah, I know that's not a 5-year picture, just a couple, but those are kind of my thoughts on where I see this going.
That's great. Thank you. Linda?
Yeah, and I work in a state library agency, and so I think a lot about kind of what's going on with the public libraries in my state as well as nationally. And a big piece of that is similar to what Tiffany mentioned in terms of the opportunity to benchmark with peers. And so I would love to see more use of project outcome amongst the libraries, both in my state and nationally, because not, you know, sometimes a library's best peers are outside of the state.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just love to see, you know, the opportunity to do those peer comparisons be more readily available. And then I think looking towards the future and to some of the requests and feedback that we've received from project outcome users, I would love to continue to think kind of outside of the box into how we can expand libraries' capacities to measure outcomes for more services that are outside of kind of traditional programs. And I think, Emily, you touched up a little bit on this in talking about like what we're looking at in this COVID environment. But I think just looking at the activities that libraries are involved in right now, but on an ongoing basis as well, with outreach or other types of services that aren't necessarily programs, but that are having a profound impact, and just finding ways to provide support for libraries to be able to capture those newer and emerging activities.
Yeah, and that definitely came up on that webinar for sure when we talked about libraries moving to virtual programs, and how that model is really going to shift for libraries in the coming years. Mm-hmm. As a quick teaser for those who on the public library side, we are doing some work on the back end of things right now around improved peer groups for libraries that will be not just tied to project outcome. We don't have quite the same system as academics do for the Carnegie classes, but we're trying to find a way to do better peer benchmarking for the public libraries in a similar fashion. So stay tuned. Again, stay engaged. That's where you'll be seeing improvements happen on the project outcome dashboards to that extent over time. There are a couple of just functional related questions about interacting with the dashboard and logging into the project outcome system I'm going to address really quickly. The system itself is structured at the institutional level. So you can have multiple logins per institution. It's not just one login per institution. And on the dashboards, if you're trying to look at your institution's data by topic or we have an example of a semester as an example, there are a lot of different ways that you can filter the way you see your data within your system. The peer groups are set. You can't change your peer groups, but you can change how you look at the data that you're sorting on within your library structure. Sarah, there was a question about privacy and IRB related data concerns. Could you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. So it's important to emphasize that we take privacy very seriously. All of the project outcome surveys are anonymous, and we ask that you not enter or add custom questions that ask for any sort of identifying information. So you're not asking participants or your patrons for their names or their email addresses or anything like that. These are all anonymous voluntary surveys. For academic libraries that might need IRB approval, I don't know if that's a common thing in public libraries, we find that usually evaluation and assessment does not require IRB approval. Unfortunately, this is always up to an individual institution. So if you're not sure, if you haven't done this sort of thing before, we would advise that you check with your institution's IRB. It's always good to have a good relationship with them anyways. So just check with them if you're not sure. And if you were using the survey responses for research, for example, then you might need IRB approval. And in general, both for this and I think some of the other questions that have come up, we do have a lot of really great resources in the toolkit, both for public and academic libraries. I know there's one on IRBs in particular. So do go in, log in. Once you log in, you'll see a link at the top of your screen that says resources, and check those out. That's where you can preview all the surveys and get advice about different steps in the outcome measurement process. So I think that could answer many of the questions that have come up already, but I did recommend that everyone check those out if you haven't done so already.
Yeah, definitely the case studies, those are on there, information about how to use the toolkit. We have heard anecdotally from some libraries that the resources are their favorite place to go when they're sharing project outcome with their peers for the first time, just because they're really set up to be informational, have good content, share information about what your peers are doing all in one place. So they're pretty easy to read. Take a look at that, sure. Lisa asked, do we offer free introductory webinar for project outcome on the academic library side of things? I know you talked a little bit about the trainings, Sarah, but is there anything that you have coming up that you want to promote for academics overall?
We have a online workshop coming up in August. You can find a link to that on our events page, and that's a 2-hour kind of interactive introductory workshop. We also have recordings of past webinars that we've done. I think I shared in the chat as well. My colleague Gina has made a great series of updated tutorials for all the different parts of the toolkit. So if you're looking to get started with one area in particular, you could take a look at those tutorials, and those are also in the resources.
And one more question for Tiffany, and then we can just do a quick thank you and wrap up. And I know that you could answer this from the Ed Board perspective or as a user perspective, but have you heard of students using project outcome for their research purposes at all, or do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, like library school students or?
I would think it was probably library school students that might be learning how to use the system or learning how to measure outcomes.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that happening, no. I think that when we presented it in ACRL, there were some students who wanted to get access or were interested in it, but I don't know what went on with that. Sarah, do you happen to know anything about?
So students can get access to like a sandbox version of the toolkit for free, so that as they're learning about all the different tools available to libraries, that they have that to just play around with, and that data won't affect anything if they're just trying it out. That's available on the academic side. I don't know about for public libraries, and I don't know really how students are using the toolkit. We just let them log in and play around.
Yeah, we typically point students from the public side over to the academic side.
I would also imagine that if a student was using it for like a research project, they're probably working with a library. So would likely be able to get access through them if they're going to be surveying their patrons.
Yes, yep, that too. Yeah. Great. Well, Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Thank you for our panelists for joining us. Tiffany and Linda, we always appreciate having the library perspective on our calls. Please take a moment to fill out the survey that is going to be available. That should pop up after we close out, as well as the link that we see in chat. We do take an outcome-based approach for all of our decision making, and so we would love to hear from you, hear what you thought, hear what you would like us to do to improve or offer next, so that we can continue to improve our structure, our toolkit, and what we offer to you. So thanks again for attending, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful day and a nice start to your summer.